spell list, spell slots, spell levels. But what if you could have powerful, character-driven, intuitive magic without all the Vancian Magic baggage? Draw Steel nails exactly that. Hey there, adventurers. Welcome back to Short Rest Studios. I'm Judd, and I'm scouting out the best the TTRPG world has to offer so you don't have to quest alone. D&D's Vancian Magic system, where spells are like the ammunition for the weapon that is your spellcaster, offers tons of options, but it's not easy to pick up. It often gets confusing for players when they have to remember character level versus spell level and roll to cast versus saving throw, and plus there are just a ton of spells. Draw Steel, though, has an innovative answer to that confusion. It does away with the separate magic system altogether, but how does it do that? Let's start by looking at D&D. It uses what's known as a Vancian Magic system. If you're already familiar with that term, you can skip ahead to the next chapter. In a Vancian system, which is named after the fiction of Jack Vance, there are distinct spells, each with a fixed purpose, that create specific magical effects. There are some similarities here. Draw Steel also has magical abilities with very specific fixed purposes. For example, the Troubadour has an ability called blocking that allows them to teleport a specific number of targets into an unoccupied space. The Censor has one called Every Step Death. I love that. That causes a target to take psychic damage whenever they move. In a Vancian system, even if you quote unquote know a spell, you have to prepare it in advance in order to use it. And you can only use each prepared spell a limited number of times before you have to prepare it again. Sometimes it's called fire and forget magic. Essentially, you forget the spell once you've used it up. In Draw Steel, you usually have to have resources to use those abilities. For example, as long as you have the resources, your Censor can still use that Every Step Death ability. But there's a significant difference that I believe is much more intuitive, and we'll get to that shortly. And of course, in a Vancian system, you can only prepare so many spells, and that limit also functions to show you how powerful your spellcaster is. In Dungeons & Dragons, we see all that Vancian structure in spell slots, daily limits, etc. While D&D Magic has its quirks, it generally fits pretty neatly into this category. This kind of system creates a lot of cognitive load. I touched on this earlier, but there's confusion a lot of times among new players and even old hands who haven't played a caster before between spell levels and character levels, between spell slots and prepared spells, and over which spells are rolled to cast and which have saving throws and why. Experienced players too feel the burden of tracking and remembering how every spell in their arsenal works and how many slots and so on, especially when you get into higher levels. Even for dungeon masters, you need so much mental bandwidth to translate this spell to this new situation. And look, Draw Steel is still a high-powered game. The more you level up, the more there is to track and remember. But it does this without creating two different systems within the same game. More on that in a minute. I and loads of others have talked a lot about one of the main differences between D&D and Draw Steel. D&D is a game of attrition, managing resources so you don't run out of them so you can fight the big bad. Draw Steel is a game of momentum. Yes, you have to manage your resources, but using them also provides you with the opportunity to do more cool stuff. It's worth the risk to keep fighting when you're running on fumes. That creates a different psychology in players. Instead of worrying whether your wizard should use that fireball now or save it till later, your elementalist in Draw Steel might take a risk in using their viscous fire now, but the reward is greater. So how does Draw Steel achieve magic that's character-driven, more intuitive, and rewards forward motion? Every character in D&D has abilities, and so does every character in Draw Steel. But instead of creating a whole separate operating system for magic, it's simply part of your character's abilities. Taking cues from 4th edition D&D, character classes in Draw Steel are built on a template that gives each of them, whether they're marshals or casters, a variety of abilities with specifically defined resource costs. Some of those are triggered abilities and signature abilities. Each class has their heroic resource, like piety for conduits, or focus for the tactician, or ferocity for the fury. And there are resources that you spend to use your heroic abilities. Signature abilities don't require your heroic resource to use, but sometimes you spend it to beef them up. If you want to know more about the primary gameplay loop, you can check out this video. But in essence, while heroes take damage and need to rest to keep going, their resources build up as an encounter or adventure progresses, giving them the ability to make more powerful use of their abilities, magical or otherwise, as they continue to fight, for example. This means that your casters and martial characters too, rather than feeling the pressure to preserve resources or rest before every battle, feel compelled to keep fighting so they get to do the really cool stuff. It's a completely different feel from the attrition-based Vancian Magic of D&D. Every character ability in Draw Steel has keywords. Abilities with the area keyword have an area of effect. The weapon keyword means it has to be used with a weapon. And straight from the rulebook, abilities with the magic keyword are used by characters who can cast spells, have innate magical features, or wield magic treasures. Such abilities do magical things such as create rays of fire, open swirling portals, or summon creatures. And while every ability has its specifics, different amounts or types of damage, different effects, they all essentially function the same way. If the situation calls for an ability roll, you make the roll and you resolve the effect. That's what makes this system more intuitive, in my opinion. All abilities, magical or otherwise, function the same within Draw Steel's gameplay loop. But that's not the only benefit of Draw Steel's implementation of magic. Since every class's abilities work the same way, it erases the caster-martial divide. The tactician can use his focus to force back the enemy line or galvanize the team. The censor can use her wraths to smite a foe with holy energy or show them a glimpse of their fate after death. Everyone gets heroic resources to do cool stuff, and every turn you essentially gain energy to cast more powerful spells, to do more impactful things. The design intent is that you'll never feel like you have to hoard your spell energy. You're rewarded for pressing on. And while the magical abilities that specific classes like the Elementalist, Conduit, or Censor get are pretty focused on combat, there are other ways to add some supernatural juice to your character. For example, perks are features that are available to all heroes that help you with other aspects of the game, like exploration, investigation, or negotiation. And there are some great supernatural perks like Arcane Trick, which lets you cast an entertaining spell that creates a minor but impressive magical effect, like teleporting someone or igniting a light source or making your body exude a particular odor you've smelled before. I'm sure you could have a lot of fun with that one. There are perks that let you manipulate objects with your mind or send telepathic messages to an ally, gain a familiar, or perform a ritual. So yeah, your magic abilities, spells, if you will, are built into your choice of class, but that doesn't mean that martial classes don't have access to magic. Most heroes that wield weapons and wear armor in Draw Steel get a kit, a fighting style that comes with equipment to match. And some kits give you a magical boost. The Arcane Archer, for instance, gives you exploding arrows. The Spell Sword kit gives your weapon an extra charge of lightning magic, and there are kits with psionic and faith boosts as well. I've talked about complications, an optional rule, before in this video. A complication is a dramatic narrative twist that deepens a hero's backstory, but it also gives you a benefit and a drawback. And these two can add some magic to your hero. Animal form lets you take the form of an animal, but sometimes the director, that's the GM, can force you to take that form. Medusa blood gives you the ability to petrify someone by looking at them, but out of combat, you can't really control it, so strangers might accidentally be turned to stone by your gaze. Those are just some examples of how perks, kits, and complications add depth to magic in Draw Steel. Adventurers, that's how Draw Steel achieves magic without a whole separate magic system, by integrating it completely into the basic gameplay loop through class-specific abilities. If you dig this kind of content and want to join me in scouting out more cool game systems like Draw Steel, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And please consider becoming part of the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button under this video. You get access to my full interview interviews with game designers like Draw Steel's James Intricasso, a great library of dice and logos maps, access to my campaign notes, and even the opportunity to help me decide what games I talk about next. Speaking of James Intricasso, check out this video to hear more about Draw Steel's design from the man himself, and I'll see you on the next short rest. Remember, you don't have to quest alone.